Hi everyone, welcome to Dave's Bonsai. On today's episode, I am itching to make a forest. Welcome to Bonsai Acres. Welcome everyone into the plant room on a beautiful blustery Saturday afternoon. We hit temps close to the freezing mark, but the wind chill is still down in those teens and single digits because the gusts are 20 to 30 miles an hour. We can't catch a break, and not much snow yet still, so we need some more insulation for these cold nights. But enough about the weather. Let's make a forest, shall we? I've been thinking about this one for several weeks. So I have a whole bunch of Tiger Bark Ficus that I have as cuttings from previous workshops that have been growing and rooting and doing pretty well. And I have so many of them, I've separated them a couple of 2 in a pot, 3 in a pot, but I had a whole bunch of pots where there were 4 and 5 in there still. So I thought I'd break them apart, check them out, and see what I've got to make into a nice forest. Now, usually my forests are in a little bit wider tray, but this time I have this really pretty Chinese pot that's long rectangle. And so almost kind of like a tree hedge, if you will, a windbreak on property up north where there's a whole bunch of trees in a row. And so I'm gonna put my Tiger Bark in this really long, skinny, and fairly shallow bonsai pot. Pretty excited about this. I don't even recall where I got this one, but one piece of advice, get involved in as many bonsai activities as you can with your club and nearby clubs, and eventually you'll just win some or gain some or see someone who's selling some, and you end up having a whole bunch of pots before you know it. On this pot, I was gonna go ahead and put in some mesh, kind of the fancy way. People make these swirly swirls with their fingers and the wire, and they do it so fast, and I just never really picked it up. So I don't know, I just mess around and doing some of these twisty, twirly, staple type look feel. I guess I just need more practice. Once the pot was ready to go, then of course, it's time to take care of the roots. Now, anytime we repot a tree or a forest, it's always the time to look at those roots and trying to straighten them out. And on these, no different. There are a couple of the early trees that I saw some roots growing really high, too high of a root plane. I had multiple planes, we're gonna keep them down low. A couple of the trees came right out of the pot with real flat bottoms all ready to go, just trim them up around the outside. So we had to break them down a little bit and make it all nice and tidy and 360-degree radial pattern and get ready to put into this long rectangle shaped pot. One of the true fun parts about putting trees together in a forest is you really can do some trial and error. So remember, if you have your soil in a small size and wet, you can put some trees in, stand them up, and they stay up pretty good. None of these trees will be wired into this forest at all. I'm gonna use rocks to keep them in place, and the wet soil makes them stand up and look either good or bad, and then you can change them around and twist them up. I organize my trees based on height and thicknesses. I want different thicknesses, different heights, so we can have a forest that has a little bit of perspective. It's always nice to have at least 3 different thicknesses, I believe. You've got your real thick ones, you've got your real skinny ones, and then something in the middle. And we're going to put our trees in close together, some far apart, never in real symmetrical patterns, and whatever looks good to you. Forests are good and easy to start, but then they become hard to maintain. So think about the future when you put your forest together. I always see forests with clumps of trees and a little bit of a trail between one side or the other, because Toby and I hike through the woods all the time, and I want to see where people could walk through and have a trail, not completely dense forests. So we're going to put these trees in and test them out. With a little bit of trial and error, not too shabby. Things are looking pretty good. I got a couple of the tall ones right in the middle, then a couple of the thicker ones on the outsides that have been maybe battered and bruised and chopped down and they thickened up. But the tall, skinny ones in the middle reaching up for that sun, and we're gonna see if we can make this forest work. A couple on the left side, a couple on the right side, a couple in the middle, and I'm always going for that odd number of trees in my forest, which is typically the pattern for most of us. But when you get above 9 trees, it's hard to really tell with the naked eye. But in this forest, I do believe I have 11 trees. And don't be afraid to start all over if it's not looking really good. I don't do a very good job of that myself. I find a couple of patterns that I like. Like on this particular forest, I liked the way the left side was developing right away. And those 4 trees look pretty good. It's almost like a bowling alley with the pins, the way it is if you look at it from the back. But from the front, there's some good space and movement. From the side, I think it's okay. The thicker ones on the inside, I got a tall, skinny one in the middle up there on the left. And I think it just kind of works. And I've got my real tall, skinny ones in the middle. Those were pretty much going to go there regardless. It's all a matter of the angle. And how is it going to end up when it's done? And that's where the rocks can help. You can move the rocks in the early stages before those roots really take a hold of that soil. When I kind of had my design pretty much where I thought it was going to be, I ended up adding some of my fines on top, the dry fines, just to kind of get some peaks and valleys of this land. This is a bit of a mound planting, which a lot of slab plantings are. And you remember, when you have a mound, you just have to be careful when you water. You have to make sure that your water is going down into the pot and not just running off of the pot on the back or the sides. So do be careful when you're doing mounds in your pots. Not that it's the end of the world. Usually with one tree in a pot, it's a lot easier to avoid the mounds. With forest, it's a little bit more challenging. Back live with the forest all trimmed up nice and tidy. I did take a couple of little leaves off in here. Remember when there's big leaves on a ficus tree, they're covering up other leaves. They don't need to grow that direction. Like this one right in here. This leaf is growing in a weird direction. It just doesn't need to be growing in there. There we go. We'll just cut that off like right there. So we trimmed it down just a little bit. We thinned a couple of trees out. This one got a little shorter. We made them stand up in the direction that made me feel the best. And that's all there is really to it. You put them in the wet soil, you keep some rocks in there to hold them in place, you keep it moist for a couple of days, keep an eye on the watering, of course, as always, and you've got, you've got yourself another forest. I absolutely love the forest. I love this process. Just put some trees in. Again, fairly simple to put a forest together when you have a whole bunch of trees. Try to get the 3 sizes. You got a thick, thinner, and thinnest, a little bit taller, a couple shorter. I've got some of that here. And don't put them so close together, right? I mean, don't put them the same space apart or together. We want it to be asymmetrical. So I've got kind of a weird triangle shape here. I've got a line over here and kind of a circle over here. It's all a little bit different. And when you spin this around on a 360-degree circle for you, look at that. There's just all kinds of great angles that show some really neat forest development there. So I'll try to get some moss on this maybe later on this summer and keep that growing. Of course, these trees do like a lot of sun, so it's hard to keep your moss in full sun. But the tiger barks in a forest fashion, looking pretty snazzy. I am stoked. I love a little Shinrin Yoku, whether it's real life walking or taking a peek through these forests. So take your stab at a forest. Again, make sure you have a couple different size trees, height-wise and thick-wise. Make them asymmetrical and to keep it an odd number. Of course, after 9 trees or so, it's hard to tell if this is odd or even. If you just guess, yeah, it's odd. It's 11. I kept it at 11, but you would never know if it was 10 unless you just sat there and stared at it for a while. Or you made it really symmetrical, people can tell. So there we have it. I got a couple different sizes, a couple different looks, and we now have another forest planting. I love the forest. Bonsai acres. Big acres, little acres. It is all a blast to me. So I'm going to do a little bit of staring at my forest here and do a little mini Shinrin Yokuin. And I might be broadcasting this live tomorrow. But if not, I hope you enjoyed the show, whether it was live or recorded, because not everybody gets to watch it live, even if it is live. So whatever I do with this one, take care of you, take care of your bonsai, and we'll catch you very, very soon. Welcome to Bonsai Acres.